I'm in the second half of November. But for today's live stream, I thought I'd talk about teaching division because I'm seeing all sorts of questions on it on the forums. And I know it's a topic a lot of people are on just now and they are struggling with. And there are very good reasons for that. Division is an incredibly hard topic to teach at the best of times. And just now we've got kids who are all over the place because they missed it last year, they missed it the year before, and they are very spooked, all sorts of children who are struggling. So when I run training for teachers, I very quickly find that teachers often have a very limited understanding of division. They have one method that works for them that they rely on, and they think that's enough for teaching. And it isn't. You have to get your head round all sorts of ideas about division. So I'm going to go through that. If you're thrown at any time in this video, you may need to rewind and do it again. And do ask any questions because it does all make sense. It just is a real mind shift for people who think they know division and are suddenly very challenged. So when I'm running teacher training, I start with a question like 15 divided by 3, and I give teachers Dean's blocks, unit blocks, these things here, just the ones blocks, 15 blocks, and ask them to divide them by 3 on their desk. Now, I'm just going to show you that with this board here, this magnetic board. What happens as we look around the room, some teachers will be going like this. I run this with teaching assistants as well. They're splitting their blocks into 3 equal piles. So I'm just going to look at the board here and seeing that they end up with 5 blocks in each pile, which is absolutely fine. But some teachers don't do that at all. They count how many groups of 3, like this, and they see that there's 5 groups of 3, and that is absolutely fine as well. Division is 2 things. It is counting groups and it is sharing fairly. A lot of teachers and teaching assistants are only secure with one of those models. You have to deeply know that it is both, and you have to talk fluently from one to the other, and I'm going to try and build your confidence with that during this session. So the next thing I do is I take 15 cards and I deal them out like this. I'm just going to show you with the blocks. Like this. I'm doing 15 divided by 3. But which am I doing? If I deal them out in a rectangle, am I counting groups of 3? Or am I sharing those blocks fairly into 3 equal groups? If I go finish like this, have I split those blocks into 3 equal groups or counted groups of 3? And the teachers who want to split groups see the splitting, and the teachers who want to count groups of 3 see it this way. And we talk a bit about organising things as a rectangle, that is array, shows you both at the same time. And we also link it into how division is the missing number in a multiplication, because of course array is the fundamental structure for multiplication at primary teaching. So if we were doing 15 divided by 3, we knew there were 15 total and 3 on one side, and we are trying to find the other side. So 15 divided by 3 is essentially 3 times what equals 15. It's the same question, 15 divided by 3. And in multiplication, one number is the number of groups and the other is the size of a group. So it kind of explains both. If that has just fried your brain, then you're getting a sense of how brain fried children are when they try to deal with division. And it's really important you understand that. Let's just link that into some practical examples. Here's a couple of questions. We've got a fairground ride and you can get 4 children in each car. And during a morning, we need to get 456 children on that ride. How many cars, how many fairground car rides are we going to need? Well, that is 456 divided by 4, but it's about counting groups of 4. Now this one, 4 workers have to build 456 machines. If they share the work fairly, how many do they have to build each? That is also 456 divided by 4, and it's a sharing fairly thing. And the world is like that, the world of division problems. It swaps between the two. You have to be fluent at both. You have to know that division is both. Just like you had to learn that subtraction can be taking away or counting on. Both work. Both work for division. And until you've really got it confidently in your head, you're going to struggle to teach the children who are struggling, which is why I've emphasised that so much right now. So when we start division, if we start with a question like 46 divided by 2, what we're going to be doing is giving children the blocks. That would be 4 10s and 6 1s, and asking them to do the division. Now they could exchange all those 10s for 1s and count groups of 2, and they would get 23. But they're probably going to be much happier splitting that into 2 equal groups and seeing that there are 23 in each group, and just being able to answer that question anyhow. And we could set it up properly like this. And we could say, well, we divided the 4 10s into 2 equal groups, and there were 2 10s in each group. We divided the 6 1s into 2 equal groups, and there were 3 1s in each group. Quite quickly, you get some confusion coming in. If we take something like 286 divided by 2, well, if we just draw the Dean's apparatus for that, there's 286 represented as Dean's apparatus. What you're going to find is that at this stage, children might either be sharing fairly the 2 into 2 equal groups. How many in each group? That's 1 for your hundreds. But they might also be counting 2s and seeing that there's one group of 2 and putting it that way. And as we get onto these 8 10s, they're much more likely to count 2s. 2, 4, 6, 8. 4 2s, that's 4. So what they've done there is they've counted groups like that. And then for this bit, the teacher might be using the language 6 divided by 2, or how many 2s in 6, or 6 shared into 2 equal groups, how many in each group. And teachers are often very unconscious of how much confusion it causes as they swap between those representations. But if we count groups of 2, which children are more likely to do confidently, it's 3 groups of 2, but we've come up with something here that doesn't really make any sense unless you understand that for each group of 2, you're putting one thing in each group. There are times when you're teaching division when you have to let the understanding go and just work on a procedure. But you need to keep coming back to the understanding and the checking as well. I'm going to show you another example now. What I'm going to work on is 81 divided by 3. 81 divided by 3, which we would set up as this, 81 divided by 3. Okay, just going to get some apparatus for that here. I'll just clean this off from before. And I'll keep a record of this here as well. This is what we're doing. 81 divided by 3. So we need 8 10s. Apologies, these are taking a little while, so they're harder to move than I realised. 8 tens, what have we got there? We've got 7, 81 divided by 3. Right, we've got our 81 there. And you can, if you want, exchange all of those for ones and count groups of 3. And you will get 27, which is the correct answer. But it's very slow. So children are going to be looking for other methods and you will be with them. You can either split these into 3 equal piles, and you'll quickly see that you get 2 tens in each pile. So that explains your 2 here. We've got 2 tens that wouldn't share, so I can exchange those for ones. These are strips of breakable ones. So that's what's going on down here, or actually a lot of schools are using up there. So you've now got 21 ones to share, and then if we deal them out one by one, you can quickly see that we get 7 in each group. I'm just doing it this way, it's slightly easier for me, but your children would normally deal them out one by one. Hi, if you're watching, if you have any questions, I'm happy to take your questions. So you can see dividing it into 3 equal groups gives you 27. Hang on, why have I got a 6 there and an 8? I had 2 groups of 9. Sincere apologies. In my exchanging, I exchanged for groups of 9 rather than groups of 10. Okay, so you get 27 in each group. That all makes perfect sense to children when you work on them slowly with it. They really enjoy that. But it's not what they then do when they start to use this method in the abstract. What they tend to do, I'll just move those back, is they count groups of 3 tens. And then they do their exchanging. And they see there's 2 groups of 3 tens, which is correct and does give them the correct answer. And then they got their 21 here, and they say, how many 3s in 21? 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 18, 21. That's 7 groups of 3. So they're really seeing that calculation like that. And at the end of that, it's not shown counting groups of 3, because we've got these groups of 30. You can kind of work it out like that if you say 10, 20, 27 groups of 3. But some of them might also be seeing it the other way, that this is each group of 3 gives each person 10. So if we kind of turn this sideways on, take these out like this. Each group of 3 gives each person 10. The next group of 3 gives each person 10. And each of these groups of 3 gives each person 1. So it's 27 that way. It is a very abstract method. If your brain is fried, now you understand why your children's brains are fried. And now I'm going to talk about how we bring it all together and make sense of it to children who are struggling. I just needed to take you on that journey as an educator, because you need to know how hard it is. You need to know that division is all these things and that there is this confusion going on. So what do we do once we've done a little bit of introduction with bricks, with sharing fairly? Well, I've got these worksheets that focus on division by 1 number on each sheet, and that's really helpful. So if we focus on this division by 2, we can help children to count how many 2s in 4, how many 2s in 6, so they can answer this question, how many 2s in 6, how many 2s in 4, and then we start to exchange. And they can check all their answers with the blocks by sharing them into 2 equal groups as well. So it's a very powerful sheet. We can start to talk about remainders here. And at all of this stage, the children who are struggling most will need a lot of teacher support, but they will have a deep sense of what they're doing and that they are doing something very powerful. And the other reason why I gather these questions onto sheets is that they're getting masses of practice of their 2 times table while they're doing this. And then we move on to another sheet, probably in another session. I mean, this can take quite a few sessions to really master, especially if you've got children who are really confused. This one is the division by 3. Now, a lot of children are struggling with their tables, especially with lockdown, but also a lot of children in any normal time struggle with their tables because they weren't fully focused, they weren't really in touch with maths when those tables were taught. So a lot of children find it helpful to write out their 3 times table down the side of this. So 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and so on. And I've even had some children who've needed to write out all their numbers and circle every 3rd number at first. Then we want to move them onto this, and ultimately we want them partitioning their numbers, but I'll come back to that on the next sheet. And then we're working through the same thing. How many 3s in 2? Or what is 2 shared into 3 equal groups? Well, it's none. And we're carrying the 2 to there. So we've got 24 1s. And we look down, 18, 21, 24. There it is. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And fill that in. And so on. And this is going to give them amazing practice of their 3 times table because they're using each of these results so many times. So even if they've had to write out their times table, they will know it much, much better by the time they've finished this sheet. And again, they can share blocks and check their answers. And when you share the blocks, at the end of it, you've got 3 lots of 8, so you can check it's still 24. In a way that you don't see with just the abstract calculation. Similarly, moving on, there's the sheet for division by 7. If you've got children struggling with their 7 times tables, again, you would write them out. If they're nearly there, it's great to not let them write them out, but if they need to write them out, they need to write them out. And this is where I talked about you're trying to nudge children on from writing all the numbers and circling every 7th number to counting on in 7s from each number to partitioning their 7 so that they can see that that's 14 because they're adding 3 to get 10 and they've got 4 of their 7 left. So that's 14. Then we add 6 to get to 20. There's 1 of the 7 left. That's 21. And it's when children are doing that that they're normally shifting to holding their tables in their heads. Either that or they've deeply rote-learned them. And the practice of this will help with either step. So we continue with that until children become really fluent and really confident. And for your children who struggle most, that might only mean that if they see a question like 432 divided by 8, they know that they've got to write out their 8 times table and work through how many 8s in 4, well there's none, how many 8s in 43. They look down, they see the 40, there's 5 8s of 40, they see there's 3 left over, they look down their list and see the 32 is 4 8s, and they're getting there. And they have a sense that they have shared that number into 8 equal parts, or they know there are 54 8s in that number. If you get them to there, for a lot of children, that is just amazing. Because if they can do division, you can then go back and they're going to be able to master addition and subtraction, and you're going to be able to sort them out. From that, moving on, when they're at that stage where they can get through it, even if they still need a little bit of support, you can start to move on to calculations like 467 divided by 2. And obviously you're going to get a remainder 1. And you can talk about, well, if we split that last block fairly, how much would each person get? And they can hopefully see that's half. And we can also talk about, we could exchange that 1 into 10/10ths. And I sit there with my block and talk about slicing it into 10 equal bits that are each a millimetre wide, because Dean's blocks are a centimetre wide. It's one of the bits of beauty about them. 10 slices that are each a centimetre square and 1 millimetre deep. They are tenths. So we can exchange that one block for 10/10ths, and we can then divide that by 2, or count how many 2's are in it, or share it into 2 equal groups. 5/10ths for each person. And then we nudge on to more complex ones. We can look at ones where you end up having to divide 3 by 7. I've got a video on that. There's videos on anything you get stuck with, please ask. And you can move on to long division and use exactly the same method. Write out the 10 times table, do the how many of that divisor in the amount you're dividing the dividend at each stage, and do the subtraction to see what's left and carry what's left. Use the same process. Any questions? Please ask. If that has fried your brain, then hopefully that's in good purpose for making you a better educator. If you've any comments, criticisms, suggestions, please just write them anywhere. I do have simpler, more organised videos on each detail of teaching primary maths. You can find them if you go to authenticmaths.co.uk/videos, or go to the About page for this channel and you'll find it all there. Please do subscribe if you'd like to be able to find them. And you can come and ask me questions live any Sunday. Take care. Bye for now.